we're going to talk about the definite article, the, which is where we started from. Now, when do we use the definite article? This is a little bit more complicated. There are 4 rules, but they're all interconnected. So rule 1 is use the when you're talking about someone or something which you have already mentioned or which people can be expected to know about or understand from the context. So let's have a look. Here we have a bit of a conversation about buying a pair of shoes. The first sentence says, I bought a new pair of shoes yesterday. So that's an introductory sentence that uses the indefinite article because this is the first time we've heard about this pair of shoes. It's the first mention of the shoes. But it's the second sentence that we're interested in. Can you believe the shoes were 50% off in the sale? So the first there means the shoes I bought yesterday. So here we use the definite article the to talk about the shoes that we introduced in the first sentence. Now, at the end of that sentence, there's another the. Can you believe the shoes were 50% off in the sale? Do we know about the sale? Has he mentioned the sale before? No. But here's the point. It says above, if you look at it, things we can expect you to know about or understand from the context. So for example, if you go and buy a pair of shoes for 50% off, you can pretty well believe that there was some kind of sale going on. So we don't need to talk about the sale. We assume that you understand that there was a sale going on. That's why we got the shoes for 50% discount. So we use the first the because we've mentioned the shoes already, and we use the second the sale, because that explains why the shoes were 50% off, and you're expected to understand that that is at least a possibility. Let's look at the next sentence. The shoes were 50% off in the sale at the mall. So the shoes were 50% off. We've introduced the shoes in the first sentence. The sale is something that we understand because if you buy shoes for 50% discount, there's probably a sale going on. And then the last bit says at the mall. So what is the status of at the mall? Well, that brings us to the second rule. Use the when there is only one of someone or something, or when it is not important which particular thing or person you are referring to. So if we look at the same sentence again, the shoes are 50% off in the sale at the mall. Well, in this case, there's probably only one mall, which is the likely place where we bought these shoes. You're expected to understand that if we say the mall, you know the mall that we're talking about, the local mall, the big mall. If we're actually buying these shoes somewhere unusual, still in a mall, but not the local mall, then we would say something like, they were 50% off in the sale at the Burlington Mall, or the mall on the other side of town, or the mall up beside the university. We would define the mall. But if you don't define the mall, you mean the local one. There's only one of something. There is a local mall, and that is what we're talking about. So once again, this is part of the context, and we're talking about the mall because it's one thing, and you know which mall we're talking about. Now, we could also say, for example, I went walking in the park. Which park? We don't need to specify. If we say the park, we mean the local park. You will understand which park we're talking about because we just say the park. If we wanted to talk about a different park, we would define which park we are talking about. To say the park means the local park, the park that you think that we'll be walking in. And similarly, we could say something like, I went jogging in the countryside. This one is where the question of whether it's important or not to understand is part of this. We went jogging in the countryside. I went jogging in the countryside. That's fine. It doesn't matter where I went jogging. I just went jogging outside the city or outside the town. It could be anywhere. I was jogging in the countryside. I don't need to be specific about where it was, and you don't need to know exactly where it was I went jogging. The last one is a bit of an interesting one. This is a very common phrase in English. I'm going to the doctors, or I'm going to the dentists, or I'm going to the lawyers. The thing is, the important information here is not that we're going to see a doctor. It's just that we're going to see the doctor for some medical advice or some medical assistance. It doesn't matter which doctor we're going to see. We don't have to tell you which doctor we're actually going to go and see. We're telling you, more importantly, I'm going to seek some medical advice or medical assistance. I'm going to the doctors. So that's where a case where it's unimportant which doctor we're going to see. You just have to know that we're going to go and see a doctor for some medical help. Okay, rule 3 is kind of an extension to this. We said that was something which is just one of a kind. It's the same here. We use the when talking about something which is unique. Unique means there's just one of them. So unique such as people, titles, places, some proper names for geographical features, and some countries which have a plural form. We'll explain that in just a moment. So we would say the president, the CEO of Apple, the Queen, because there's only one of these. There's only one president, President Trump, the CEO of Apple, Tim, and the Queen, our current Queen here in the UK. The last one here is the Smiths. That's a fairly unusual one. Instead of saying, here is Mr. and Mrs. Smith and their 3 children, John, Tom, and Mabel, we actually just say, oh, here are the Smiths. So we use the Smiths to mean the whole group. It's back to being a member of a group, but we call them the Smiths, the Smith family. Now, we also say, talking about geographical features, well, I'm not sure that the sun is a geographical feature, but we only have one sun, we only have one moon, so again, it's unique, so we just call it the sun, the moon. But it's the same with, for example, mountains, the Himalayas, the Andes, the Rockies, or the Nile, the Amazon, the Mississippi, or the Atlantic, the Pacific. We call these big, noticeable, unique features using just their name and the definite article the. And then we mentioned the thing about countries. Most countries, we'll see this later on, most countries, we don't use the definite article, so we just say Germany or France or Italy. But with some of them, where they have a plural form, we do use the definite article the. So for example, you might say, I'm going to America. That's one way of doing it. But if you say, I'm going to the United States of America, you have to use the definite article because United States is a plural form. So you might say, I'm going to the United States of America, or you might say, I'm going to the United States, or you might say, I'm going to the US. We can use America on its own, but when we use the United States or the US, we always use the definite article because it's a plural form. Same with the Netherlands, Holland, to the rest of us. Lands itself is a plural form, so we would always use the Netherlands. The United Kingdom, it's united. There's actually 6 different parts of the United Kingdom, so we call it the United Kingdom or the UK. So the 2 short forms, the US and the UK, follow the same pattern. And we need to be a little bit cautious about that kind of thing. These are acronyms. So the acronym for the European Union is the EU. And again, we say the European Union and the EU. But for example, with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, we say the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But when we turn it into an acronym, NATO, NATO, we don't use the definite article. It becomes simply NATO. NATO did this. I'm going to see someone from NATO. We don't use the definite article. So you need to be a little bit cautious when using acronyms. And then the 4th rule is we use the when using superlatives and ordinal numbers. Let's talk about superlatives. I'm sure you understand all of these, the biggest, the best, the fastest, the ugliest. This is just another way of saying this means there's only one of them. So for example, we might say a big man, a bigger man, but there is only one biggest man. So we say a big man because there might be lots of big men. A bigger man, there might be lots of bigger men, but there is only one biggest man. So we call him the biggest man because there's only one. So it's the same theme all the way through. You may also say something like, he was the ugliest boy in the school. Again, the ugliest means there's only one of them. He was the ugliest. And we say in the whole school. Now, again, we use the here. We haven't mentioned the school before. We certainly haven't mentioned the whole school before, but that's what we're talking about. We can assume the whole school because uh, we understand that we're talking about a guy during his educational period, a boy, not a man. Okay, so that's why we could say the whole school, even though we've not said a whole school or a school before. We can assume this from the context. And let's talk about ordinal numbers. Cardinal numbers, of course, are just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ordinal numbers are the first, the second, the 15th. And so the rule is whenever you use an ordinal number before a noun, we would normally use the definite article the. Now here I've introduced a little bit of new vocabulary for you. For the umpteenth time, will you please go to sleep? That means that I've told you to go to sleep, or I've asked you to go to sleep many times before. I haven't counted exactly how often I've told you. So I'm not going to say for the 12th time or the 13th time or the 14th time. I'm going to say for the umpteenth time. It's an indefinite amount, but it's a lot. I've asked you to go to sleep a lot and you're still awake. So for the umpteenth time, we're using the ordinal number before the noun time. So we use the definite article the. For the umpteenth time, will you please go to sleep? Okay, one last thing before we leave the definite article, we need to think about the pronunciation of the. Now, you may think, what's he talking about? Let's have a look at it. We saw earlier on that when the indefinite article precedes a consonant sound, we use a, and when it precedes a vowel sound, we use an. It's the same kind of thing with the definite article. With a consonant sound like p for president, we say the president, the. It's a very short sound, the president. But if we are talking about a noun that starts with a vowel sound, again, apple, we say the apple, the apple. So it's the president or the apple. I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit there. The president, the apple. The president, the apple. The president, the apple. You have to listen very closely to it, but there is a difference between the way we pronounce the when it's before a consonant sound and the before a vowel sound, the apple, the apple, the. There's another problem that we have to be aware of because sometimes we use the definite article purely for emphasis. Let me give you an example. So say Donald Trump is about to turn up and you say, here comes the president, then I might say, what, the president? The president? I'm using the form the, even though it starts with a consonant sound, president, p. The president? It's an emphasis. Usually when asking a question, is it the president? Now, it's exactly the same pronunciation as the apple, but it's much longer and stronger. We use it with much more force. So that's why I've written it in capital letters with a capital the. What, the president? It's the same sound as the apple, it's just longer and stronger. And we use that when we want to emphasize, and we use the whether or not it's a consonant sound or a vowel sound. If we're using it for emphasis, it doesn't matter, we use the president. Something to think about. The, and the, that's the way we use it. So that's it for the definite article. Just to summarize, use the when you're talking about someone or something which you have already mentioned, or which people can be expected to know about or understand from the context. Or use the when there is only one of something, someone, or one of something, or when it's not important which thing or person you're referring to. And in the same kind of theme, use the when talking about something unique, when there's only one of something, like a geographical feature, or when you're talking about superlatives. And once again, ordinal numbers, we use it when we use an ordinal number before a noun, we normally use the definite article. So that's it for definite articles. Now we're going to move on and have a look at this a little bit more, because at the bottom here, you'll see the North Atlantic Treaty Organization becomes simply NATO and uses the zero article. So in the next video, we'll talk about zero article.